What's going on, bitches? Welcome to Fresh Cuts. Today's episode is on butternut squash. I'm gonna teach you how to get the most out of your squash season. What do we usually do? Chunk it in a soup, forget about it. Nah, man, today, we're gonna roast it. Today, we're gonna treat it like it deserves to be treated. And squash is in peak season all the way through winter, so we got a couple more months. So it's time to, get to cooking squash. I love squash, the bugs hate it. What we're gonna do here, we're gonna make it easy to cut, right? So we wanna go flat edges, baby. So we're gonna take off the top that we're gonna normally throw away anyway. We're gonna put that in a throwaway pile. We're gonna cut this guy right in half right here. Nice and flat, right? And we're gonna cut off this bottom. Just cause it's not so flat and it can roll and you just cut yourself, it's just not nice. Normally we'd throw this in the trash, right? Not on this food show. All right, guys, so we're gonna cut this in half. Really easy, this is where you get your seeds. Okay, cool. You're one of those guys that takes your seeds and roasts them? Me too, fantastic. That's not what this is about. Today, what we're talking about is what we normally would be trimming off right here is the little sides of our butternut squash. All right, cool, so I'm just gonna set that guy off the side. This is all my little scraps here that I'd normally be throwing in the trash, but we're not gonna be doing that today. I'll show you why here in a bit. Next, we're gonna taste our, I shouldn't have cut this in half. I should take a spoon out of this little drawer here, and I'm gonna go ahead and take out these seeds. Normally I'd be saving these seeds, but for the purpose of this episode, and just in case you're in a hurry, we're gonna be scraping these seeds into our stockpile. Just use any kind of spoon that you can kind of just get in these nice little edges here. We're gonna move on. You guys get the point. So we're just gonna go into those rolling oblique cuts. Excuse me. Hey, burners. Make sure you get all this little edges off of your squash here that you normally be throwing in the trash, because that's what you thought was right until today. All right, so we're gonna cut it in half. We're gonna go on these nice flat sides here and go in half one more time. You take these little bad boys and you can do these little rolling oblique cuts. What's nice about that is it got all this beautiful surface area. Just want to roll it every time you cut it. That's how you get all that nice open faces here. All right, cool. So now after we have our butternut squash into our beautiful little oblique cuts and we have our guts here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our guts and we're gonna put them into a stock pot here. Just gonna add this here to this guy. And you just want to cover the squash just like any stock that you're putting into it. You want to cover just to the top of it with a little bit of water. And we're gonna put this guy on high heat and bring it to a boil. And this is the part that we'd normally be throwing away. And that's what makes this recipe, or whatever the hell you want to call this, different. Normally people just be putting this, I don't care if it's like the Food Network or whoever's talking about this, normally they're just like, they have this little scrap bowl. Thank you, Sadie, I agree. People that waste food, it's a terrible thing. So even on TV, these people that call it a scrap bowl or whatever they do while they're recording to make themselves feel better, it's normally just going in the garbage. We could be taking that stuff that we call garbage and we could making like more condensed flavor, and we could be making this taste a lot more like itself, and that's the entire purpose of this. So while your stock's going behind you, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our nice cuts here and we're gonna toss it in a little bit of olive oil and some salt. We're gonna throw it into our preheated oven. Throw these guys into here. A little bit of olive oil. And if you want to, you can add a little bit of the grapeseed oil, like I was saying earlier. You can kind of take the smoke point of an oil and make it a little bit higher when you combine two different oils. So your olive oil won't give you that bitterness. We're just gonna mix that around a little bit. Don't be afraid to get dirty, that's what Grandma always said. And we're gonna throw this into our preheated oven here. So it's been about 30 minutes. We're gonna take our stock here and we're gonna strain it through a nice little fine mesh. All right, and we're gonna take this liquid and we're gonna reduce this down to a syrup. What we're gonna be looking for is a super syrupy consistency. So you're gonna wanna bring this down almost to al sec, which is nearly a dry pan. You're gonna think you're gonna be burning this, but what you're doing is really condensing all of this flavor, and you're gonna make this squash really stand out at your next family cookout or whatever the f you cook for. As you can see, we got super syrupy. This almost looks like we're making a caramel, and it's not. This is all the complete natural sugars that are coming from the squash itself. So we have this beautifully little cold cut up butter here. Just gonna go a couple knobs at a time and get a nice emulsification going in here. It's almost like a butternut squash caramel. It's pretty amazing. There's no sugar added to this at all. It's the moment that we've been waiting for, guys. This squash is finally done roasting. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull them out here. All right, we got our beautiful squash. I'm gonna take my squash caramel here, turn off the heat because we ain't trying to start no house fires. Scrape this thing down here. Oh my God. Rachel Ray, do you see this shit? You better. All right, cool. So we just take this beautiful squash, butternut caramel here. A little bit of salt doesn't hurt nobody. And you bring this to your little showdown, whatever you're gonna be eating this at, I promise. Even the guys that don't like to admit that vegetables are delicious will be fucking begging you for this recipe. So we're gonna go ahead and take this here in a beautiful plate. Fair squash. Plate it out. Make it look all pretty. Just as good as it tastes and smells. And if you were good enough and saved enough of them, you can garnish it with a little bit of squash seeds. And if you really want to get fancy, guys, you could have some nice finely cut chives here. But that's just nuts. So we'll just top a little bit of squash seeds, a little bit of Maldon salt. There you have it. This is our butternut squash. Not in a soup form. It is perfectly roasted, and we took the parts that we'd normally be throwing in the trash. We made a beautiful stock out of that. Reduced it down to this beautiful syrup and emulsified that with our butter and made this delicious caramel. Roasted it whole, pulled it out of the oven, tossed all that deliciousness together, and what you have here is a final beautiful roasted butternut squash topped with its own seeds. You done, right? You gotta eat it. Done. It's the easiest part.
I'll burn myself for you guys here.
Speechless. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us on Fresh Cuts. Today's episode, butternut squash. Can't wait for you to tune in on the next episode. My name's Jake Bauer. Thank you for your time.